People have a lot of guilt. You know, there's a line of social psychology that claims that most people feel that they're better than other people. And like, I just don't buy that. That isn't what I've seen in my life. And maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm a clinical psychologist and I see more people who are overtly suffering, maybe, than people do in general. Although I'm not so sure about that, you know, because you don't have to scratch very far beneath the surface of most people's lives before you find something truly tragic. And I don't mean the sort of tragedy that you whine about. I mean, you know, your mother has Alzheimer's, or your best friend committed suicide, or you have a close relative with cancer, you have a sick child, or, you know, there's something wrong with you, because almost everyone has at least one really terrible thing wrong with them. And if you don't, hey, you will, so, you know. So, you know, that tragic sense of being is there with people all the time. And it's also the case that in my experience, like, I rarely meet someone who says, hey, you know, I'm doing everything I possibly can, I'm a hell of a guy, and I can't see how I could possibly improve, you know? You meet someone like that, you think they're narcissistic, right? And you're right. But most people don't feel that way. They feel like they could do a hell of a lot better than they are, and they're quite acutely aware of their faults, and they don't feel that they're what they should be. And you see, what happens in the story of Adam and Eve as well is that when people become self-conscious, at least that's how it looks to me, they get thrown out of paradise, and then they're in history. And history is a place where there's pain in childbirth, and where you're dominated by your mate, and where you have to toil like mad, like no other animal, because you're aware of the future. You have to work and sacrifice the joys of the present for the future constantly, and you know you're going to die, and you have all that weight on you. And to me, again, that's just, how can anything be more true than that? That's just, as far as I can tell, that's just how it is. Unless you're naive beyond comprehension, there's something about your life that is echoed in that representation. And why it is that, I mean, we're such strange creatures because we don't seem to really fit into being in some sense. And that's also what's expressed in the notion of the fall. The existentialists said, well, people feel like they have a debt that they have to pay off to existence for the crime of their being, something like that. And maybe it's because we're acutely aware that we have to offer something of value to the people around us so that they can tolerate us, you know, while we're going about our business. But it seems deeper than that, is that human beings seem to exist in a post-cataclysmic world, and that's exactly also what's represented in Genesis. And it's very interesting because, you know, in the Adam and Eve story, there's two catastrophes, essentially. There's the catastrophe that occurs when Adam and Eve wake up, which we'll talk about in detail, and become self-conscious and know that they're naked. And their eyes are open, right? So that's the terminology that's used. And to have your eyes open means to have an increment in consciousness, essentially, because eyes are associated with consciousness for human beings because we're intensely visual animals. And so the metaphor of having your eyes opened is the same as the metaphor of coming to consciousness. And so to be naked in front of a crowd is to have everyone, it's to have the judgment of the social world focused on your self-evident inadequacies. And that makes people self-conscious, and that's a real human state. It's associated with neuroticism in the Big Five trait model. But people don't like that at all. They don't like having their fragility and vulnerability exposed to the group. It's one of the two major fears of people, because one is social humiliation, and the other is something like mortality and death.
If you found the video useful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, see you later.